Are you concerned about the quality of your tap water? Have you ever wondered how water could impact your health beyond hydration? Do you want to discover a new way to improve your health with water? My name is Gamden, founder of Wellness Impact and host of the Thriving with Diabetes podcast. We empower people with type 2 diabetes to achieve diabetes remission and prevent complications, helping them live healthier, happier, and longer lives. In this episode, Jeremy Jones, a health coach and consultant, joins us. We explore water and health, the current state of our tap water, and how we deal with that. We hope you find this discussion helpful for diabetes, overall health, and longevity. Enjoy the episode and make sure you subscribe and follow us for more expert tips and strategies to thrive with diabetes. Jeremy, welcome to the Thriving with Diabetes podcast.
Thank you for your invitation. Very excited to be here, Gamden.
Brilliant. Water has a unique role in maintaining health beyond just hydration. Its quality can impact our health and wellness significantly. My question is, how does the quality of water we drink affect our health, and why is it so important to pay attention to that?
Well, essentially, water health was the foundation of all civilizations. We drew water from sacred sources, from wells, from springs, and as a part of that narrative, there was also a tradition in many spiritual practices which was associated with fasting. So drinking healthy water from a good quality source and fasting were two of the very early narratives that have journeyed with us as a species on this planet. And alas, the quality of our water has become more and more commoditized and destroyed by being pumped miles and miles to get to us. But essentially, the sacred nature of water is that with fasting, we're able to allow the body to detoxify, renew, go into autophagy and ketosis. And we know from other health professionals in the area, in the space, about the potency of fasting. And I've in fact within the last 2 years, I did a 10-day water fast and was able to help to regenerate my macular degeneration. And so I've had a personal lived experience of working with the healing aspects of healthy water. And so it's important that we remind ourselves of the role that healthy water plays in our health and well-being. There's a book I highly recommend, this book here, which is The Transformational Power of Fasting by Stephen Harold Berner. And I highly recommend this book to go into, or to be willing to be curious about what is there for us if we choose to take fasting more seriously.
Brilliant. Very interesting. Thank you for sharing that information. I am surprised that you mentioned fasting, and this something many of us don't know about. And you mentioned that as well, your personal experience with fasting. You did a 10-day fasting. How did you find that?
Well, it was amazing. I mean, just briefly about my healing journey. I was diagnosed with epilepsy in my late teens, and so I was on quite heavy medication for epilepsy, and I didn't realize that the pills were actually not actually helping me heal. So I went into a whole other paradigm of alternative healing with macrobiotics and diet and exercise. And so as a result of that, I learned a lot about the power of food and healthy food. And of course, healthy water was a part of that narrative. But because my liver was so damaged by the medication I was on for 8 years, one of the protocols that I follow is a fasting as a liver cleanse. So I did liver flushes to clean my liver. And a couple of years ago, at the end of a liver cleanse, I decided I would do a water fast for 10 days. I researched it, and it just felt the right thing to do, and it was miraculous. Interestingly enough, I just bought these glasses from the local optician, and I'd had an eye test. And so they did a topographical scan of the back of the iris, and I could see the macular degeneration there and thought nothing of it. And then after the fast, my wife said to me, "By the way, how's your eye?" And I noticed that it was about 35% improved. And I couldn't believe it. So I went back to the eye specialist, had another photograph taken, and I can share this data with you. And lo and behold, the epithelial cells at the back of the eye were healed. And you can see the difference. And so this really revealed to me the extraordinary, exquisite nature of how the body will heal itself, and how the epithelium, which are the cells which make up the back of the eye, when you go into autophagy, the body creates stem cells. And so the body will actually heal itself. And so fasting is to be taken very seriously and to be done with great consideration. But for anyone that is in a situation where they're challenged by health conditions such as diabetes, I'm not a doctor, so I can't recommend it, but I can't prescribe it as a doctor, but I can say from personal experience, and if you do your research, you'll find that fasting as a way to lean back into the power of nature and the power of healing is probably the most powerful thing anyone can choose to do.
Brilliant. Very interesting. Thank you for sharing that. In our last meeting, you mentioned that water can hold information and affect us beyond just hydration. Can you explain what it means that water has information and how that impacts our health?
Absolutely. Well, the funny thing is, Gamden, is that we're spending north of 2.6 billion in this country alone on bottled water, and water from, inverted commas, from source, i.e. from a spring or a safe source. And whether or not, of course, when it's stored in plastic, it's healthy is another matter. But we as Hydrosapiens gravitate towards the idea of natural. So when we do that, when we lean in and buy a bottle of whatever it is, Scottish mountain water or source water, what essentially we're doing is we're acknowledging the qualitative side of water, which is that water carries the information of the environment that it's been through. So for instance, if I say to you, if we were walking in the mountains and I offered you some lovely fresh spring water from a mountain source, and I said, but hang on a second, I've got some tap water I brought with me, what would you prefer? Because naturally we gravitate towards quality. It's the quality of the water that we know has the magic in it. And so the science behind water now is revealing that there's what's known as the fourth phase of water, which is beyond the quantitative loading of the contaminants in water. Water has an inner structure, and water remembers where it's come from. Which is why we're spending north of 2.6 billion on bottled water. But we know that's not sustainable. We know that that's not workable in terms of its environmental impacts. And so really the distinction with understanding the notion that water holds information is distinct from filtration, which we're going to talk about in a minute. And so the thing is that we are in this betwixt and between situation of being surrounded by water from our taps, and yet we know that we don't want to drink tap water. We know that it is not attractive. We know that energetically it's flat, it's dead, it has no living energetic quality. It hasn't the vibration of quality that we want. And of course we know from spas and from, as I talked about earlier on, about naturally healthy water, these are all qualities that we may have been privileged to know about or that we are aware of. And so it's trying to find a way of bringing that quality of vitality with water that has natural vibrancy back into our lives. And that's the challenge, which leads us on to the next question.
Before you continue watching or listening to this episode, I want to take a moment to invite you to book a call if you are looking for personalized support to manage diabetes effectively and take control of your health. Visit wellnessimpact.org to book your call today. Now, let's back to the episode. Brilliant. Very interesting. Thank you for sharing that. This will lead us to the next part, and many people don't realize what is in their tap water and how it might affect them. So my question is, what are some things people should know about the tap water quality today?
Absolutely. Well, if we look at the conventional mechanical engineering distinctions around healthy water, there are three conventional pillars which essentially are still being used now to determine what we call potable or tap water. The first one is the biologics. So, does the water have bugs in it that if we consume will cause us to have stomach problems? Has the water got pathogenic activity? That's the first question. And of course, that's addressed with chlorine, which we'll talk about in a minute. The second thing is the chemistry of the water, or its reactivity, which is its pH, its alkalinity and acidity. And of course, water authorities will use different buffers and buffer media in it to maintain a stability of pH. And then the third pillar is what's known as the total dissolved solids, or the hardness of the water. So the harder the water, the more calcium carbonate you get on heat exchangers, and when it dries out, it leaves spots and marks everywhere. And so it's balancing those three things that the water authorities have to deal with. Now, the biggest issue we've got is chlorine. And there was a book written by a gentleman called Dr. Joseph M. Price, this man here, and he started studying water, but he was in the Vietnam War. He was an engineer in the Vietnam War, and the troops were being given high amounts of chlorinated water, because obviously in the tropics the pathogenic liability is much higher. And to his disgust and curiosity and amazement, these young American infantrymen were dying of atherosclerosis, and he couldn't understand why. So he went out, and the book explains, he went back to America and he started researching work with chickens being dosed the same levels of chlorine in the water as the troops were in Vietnam. And the chickens all started getting atherosclerosis, hardening of the arteries. And so one of the things that he was able to determine was that since the introduction of chlorine in municipally treated tap water, heart disease has risen. Now, this is a really horrific fact. And the thing is that, and we've become habituated to the idea that chlorine is okay to have in water. Well, it's not okay to have in water. It oxidizes the cholesterol. So basically, it's a biocide, and it kills the good bugs. It kills the bad bugs, but it also kills the probiotic, the healthy bugs in the water, the healthy microbiome in the water. And so that's the first thing. And of course, we know from our research into tap water that there's microplastics, there's pharmaceutical derivatives, there's estrogen, nitrates, nitrites. There are a whole cacophony of problems in contaminated that actually can contaminate tap water. And so we know that it's not right, it doesn't taste good. And if we're lucky, let's say you live in the Peak District maybe, and the water source is from a local reservoir, the only thing you've got to deal with is chlorine. But if you're in the Thames Valley, then that water has been recycled over and over and over again. And so, of course, you have all the problems of all the pharmacological waste that passes through the body. And one of the biggest problems water authorities have is how to get rid of those pharmacological contaminants, which have a very, very long shelf life. And of course, we know that's affecting the reproductive cycle of animals. when it goes into nature. So there are all sorts of problems with tap water, and that we need to wake up to, and so that's where we arrive on the shores of, well, how do we deal with water in the most powerful way that's coming into our homes, and how do we make that water healthy again, not only from the removing of the contaminants, but also energetically, because water that's been pumped miles and miles to get to us, it's lost its way, it's lost its energetic charge. A bit like when you rub a balloon at Christmas time on your jumper and you stick it to the wall, you create a static charge. Well, in the same way that water, basically, when it's pumped miles and miles to get to us, that static charge builds up and it causes the water to go into entropy. It causes a dismantling of the water's natural vibrancy and structure. So you might bathe in tap water or shower in tap water, but it's not going to donate any energy to you. It's not going to actually give you any vitality. And this is the situation we find ourselves in.
Before you continue watching or listening to this episode, I want to take a moment to invite you to book a call if you are looking for personalized support to manage diabetes effectively and take control of your health. Visit wellnessimpact.org to book your call today. Now, let's back to the episode. Brilliant. Shocking. I cannot say only shocking information. And you mentioned one of the issues is there are bugs. And in order to deal with that, so we use chlorine.
Chlorine.
So one side effect of using chlorine is it damages the good bacteria in our gut, and that is a big issue. And I wanted to ask you about water bottles. What do you think of them?
Well, obviously there are many different brands, but for the main, a lot of them are stored in plastic containers. The plastic leaches into the water. The water's been sitting in warehouses for many, many months. It's then obviously transported, and of course then we have the problem with the plastic waste as well. So in other words, we are contributing to a catastrophe that is polluting the oceans. So bottled water, whilst it tastes better than tap water, as a long-term solution, it's not helpful. And so, in terms of, we're very split So we might have we buy bottled water, and if we want to roll out the boat, we buy bottled water in glass bottles, and we treat ourselves to a quality spring water in glass bottles, and then but we don't put it in our kettle to boil our food, to boil our teas and coffees with, or we don't put that water into our food. And so we're very split, and we might have a Brita filter, which we then put in the kettle, or we might use for cooking our food. But the problem is we don't have an abundant source of healthy, vibrant, filtered water in the home. And that's, I think, really the problem, is that we're on this journey of wanting for health and well-being in our lives, and yet we are constantly having to buy into systems that are A, not environmentally supportive, and B, don't give us an abundant security of high quality, energetically alive water.
Brilliant. Thank you for sharing that. This will lead us to the next question. Some people might use filters, but not all methods are equally effective. So my question is, what are the best ways to filter water?
Great question. Well, the thing is that there's the aspect of water filtration falls into two specific narratives. One is filtration, which is passing water through a filter jug with a filter in it. And then the other is what's known as purification, which is either distillation or something called reverse osmosis. And they essentially enable you to remove all the contaminants in the water. But the problem with that is that distillation is expensive. You've got to use electricity all the time, and it only produces a certain body of water that's distilled. You then have to filter that water because you get what's called cross-migration of volatile gases. So if you drink distilled water without filtering it, it tastes disgusting because, of course, there are gases that cross-migrate when you actually do the distillation. Now, reverse osmosis, I know all about reverse osmosis. I used to work for a company that sold reverse osmosis systems. I thought it was the answer to my prayer. Reverse osmosis is water squeezed through a thin film membrane, which then basically separates all the physical particulates out. But there's a ratio of 2 litres thrown away to 1 litre that you use, which again is a very wasteful way of working with water. And so those are the current ways in which people use filters or purification systems to manage their water. But of course, both those systems don't address the elephant in the room, which is the structure of water. And arguably, some people would argue that the structure of water is more important than what's actually in the water. I sit in the middle. I believe it's important to get rid of as much of the contamination as you can, so the chlorine without a doubt, the nitrates, nitrites, estrogen, and a degree or as much as you can of the fluoride if you're in a fluoridated area, and then to work with another narrative where people are starting to be aware that people can start to put energy back into the water. So people use things like spiralizers or vortexes or crystals, and so spun water, crystals, vortexes, magnets even. The thing with those systems is, from my experience, is that the water will change the structure of the water, but the water reverts back to the way it was. So working with those particular narratives doesn't actually permanently affect permanent change in the water body, if that makes any sense.
Brilliant. Very interesting. I know there are a lot of technical terms, and I would recommend that people can or need to watch this episode more than once, so they understand the information better and digest it as well. I believe that you promote a water solution called Grander Water. Is that correct?
Yes, on my journey, on my healing journey, I looked at so many different systems, and reverse osmosis I thought was the answer, but of course you can only drink that out of a single tap. You can't have it throughout the whole house. Well, you can have a reverse osmosis throughout the whole house. It's very expensive. You have to have a plant room. It costs upwards of £35,000, and then you're throwing away 2/3 of the water to have completely pure water. So although back in the day I did install a few systems like that, for day-to-day people like myself and yourself, that's not even a workable solution. But I came across the work of Victor Schauberger, who's an Austrian naturalist, and he talked about implosion and the notion of implosive qualities that are happening naturally in nature. And then that led on to some other work by a water innovator called Johann Grander. They're both Austrian, and Johann Grander found a way of taking a very, very high quality water and then basically transmitting into that water a vibrant potency. Such was the impact of that water became if you like, a recording. And that device behind me, you can see there's a cross section where the red areas are where he holds what's called the information water. And the information water is his unique innovation. And he invented this about 45 years ago. And what he did was he took a very, very pure mountain water from an old medieval copper mine deep inside the Austrian mountains. And that water has a very, very pure register, and it's still bottled today. You can still buy it in one of his bottles here. And why this water is unusual is that he passes it through a special device that he created. And this device essentially amplifies the energetic quality of the mountain water from where it comes. So in other words, he's taken a really beautiful mountain water that's taken 60 years to percolate through the mountains. So that water is already in a pristine state. It hasn't seen line of sight mobile phone masts. It hasn't had glyphosate or ground aquifer pollution from farming. It's completely and utterly pure as a register of water. And he has taken it through his proprietary magnetic implosive resonance machine. And that basically enables that water to then become a tuning fork or a transmitter of itself, if that makes any sense. And on the basis of that, he has created an entire series of technologies, of which behind me is what's known as the Grander unit, which is the Grander unit that you'd have in your home when you want to revitalize all the water coming into your home. First, we have filters that you filter out the contamination with first. We have sorry about this. Just grab this. So we would use filters like this on the mains coming into the home, and then we use 3 or 4 of these, and then we pass it through the unit that's behind me, and as a result of that, you then have quantitatively filtered water without the chlorine and all the other mischief, and then restructured water. And it's the restructuring of the water that brings the magic back to the water. So when I first had a system in my home, I was showering in it, and I suddenly had more energy. The water gave me more energy, and I couldn't believe how much more energy the water was giving me. And one of the things I think we all need and recognize in our lives is when we have more energy, we realize something healthy is going on, because energy is the currency and indicative of our health. So. And that began me on this journey. 22 years ago, I left the company I was with, the reverse osmosis company, and I got involved with Grander Water Revitalisation and have been an ambassador for the technology. I don't like referring to myself as a salesperson, because this technology, selling for me is inelegant in the sense that I much prefer to introduce people to the technology, have them experience it, and then they make a choice from their own intuitive, lived, visceral experience. And the easiest way to start that journey is by literally buying a bottle of the revitalized water, because this bottle produces an emanation field around it. So you can literally place a glass of tap water next to this bottle, wait 30 minutes and do a taste test. I have a YouTube channel which is granderwaterforlife.co.uk/YouTube, or you can Google it, or a dedicated website called granderwaterforlife.co.uk, and in it you can see testimonials where people have literally bought a bottle of water, and we have a special jug called a Biosera jug, which is a sort of an upmarket Brita filter jug. It's got a much more sophisticated filter in it, and they literally buy a bottle and the filter, and they start their journey together by quantitatively filtering out the tap water, getting rid of all the mischief, and then using the bottle as a resonator, literally placed next to the Brita filter. Now, you don't have to drink this water at all. You can just use it as a resonator. Now, I know that that sounds really far-fetched. A lot of people are thinking, well, that's really ridiculous, you know, what are you talking about? But we forget that this device here, I can speak to anyone in the world with this device. I can send pictures to anyone in the world with this device. It's called a mobile phone. If we told our ancestors that we could do that with a bit of plastic, they wouldn't believe you. And yet we have cognitive dissonance when I say to you, we have water that can communicate with water. Okay? It's a different paradigm. You know, this can communicate with anybody in the world, and yet people stumble with the idea that water can communicate with water. And so we have to go back to this notion of water has the ability to absorb the information on the journey that it's come from. So healthy water transmits a healthy coherence. Water from the tap that's been pumped miles and miles to get to us is affected by that implication and the impregnations of all of those things, which renders the water flat and dead. And so what we're in receipt of here is a technology that's literally able to remind water of its inherent geometry, of its inherent structure again. And so this is, for me, the really exciting magical nature of this innovation is that it's not for me to tell you, it's for you to experience. And when you have the experience of it, you won't want to drink anything else that hasn't had the presence of Grander next to it, because it is a really, really unusual technology. It is peerless. There's nothing else quite like it.
Brilliant. Very interesting. Thank you for sharing that and giving us a demonstration about the products. And you mentioned this is not an old, it's not a new system. It has been for many years.
That's right. I was in Austria celebrating the 45th anniversary last October. And we have remarkable peer-reviewed science now that reveals that this technology, when you pass it in the home through the whole house system, it's able to naturally soften the water through a process known as, I've got it written down here because it's always difficult to explain, but it's called dynamically, what is it called here? Yes, it's basically something called dollop, which is dynamically ordered liquid-like anion polymers. And that enables the water to naturally self-seed the calcium carbonate, which stops the build-up on heat exchangers. So you don't have any build-up on the heat exchangers. That's the first thing. The second thing is that the water, and this is all peer-reviewed science, the water actually liberates 0.5% of the available oxygen, which means that makes the water 95% more effective at removing toxins and cleaning the water. And we have industrial case studies where effluent water lagoons have been treated with Grander and the water switches from anaerobic to aerobic. So it basically increases water's potential as a cleaning agent. And then the third thing, which is fascinating, is that it increases the natural probiotic of water. So there are microorganisms in water that depend on oxygen in order to maintain healthy water. And Grander has an impact rating of 8.43 out of a maximum impact rating in peer-reviewed science of 9.5. So it's been deemed a very, very significant methodology for working with water at a very large level in terms of working with water management. Also, the latest science around the blue water, or the information, the Grander original water here, is that when this is consumed neat, it increases the speed of cellular regeneration in the body. And on my water fast, I actually consumed a bottle of this every day, and that's partly why my eye, I think, got better. And the other thing is that it reduces the oxidative stress in the body. And the third thing, which is the fascinating distinction, is that on in vitro cell lines, they've now discovered that Grander water increases the epithelial development in the intestinal flora by 17.4%. Well, I know of no other filtered tap water that can do that. And so, for instance, that means it's reducing the gap junction, increasing the intestinal health, and as a result, that water is it stands up to its name, which is water revitalisation by Grander. It is a narrative that's peerless in that respect.
Brilliant. Very, very interesting. Thank you for sharing that. I have got another question before we finish this episode. What inspiring message or advice would you like to leave with our viewers and listeners to motivate or help them on their health journey?
Well, I would say this. I would say that every day you drink water. Every day your body depends on water for renewal. We depend on beautiful water to shower in, to clean. We wash our clothes, we wash our dishes, we rehydrate, we water our plants. And so the thing is that I would invite you to listen to your intuition about water and ask the question, what legacy do you want to leave the next generation about water? And in order to leave a legacy, you have to have something to say in your legacy. And the only way you can really leave a legacy is to go out and experiment and to be curious. So go and experiment, go and find out about different things. You know, this bottle here is something like £22. It's a very, very small investment. to use. You don't even have to buy the filter jug. That filter jug, you can buy that at a later date. But just with this investment, you can place a glass of tap water next to it. Make sure you've placed another glass at least 3 meters away, and wait for half an hour and do a taste test. And look at the testimonials on my website, because the thing is that at the end of the day, talk is cheap, and being sold ideas and gadgets and this and that, we're all being oversold to. But at the end of the day, we need to listen to our own experience. And the way that you can do that is to invest literally a small amount of money in remapping and rediscovering what this technology can do to your tap water. And that for me is the beginning of an extraordinary journey for anyone who's listening and who really wants to re-examine and be curious enough to lean into doing some water experiments. You won't be disappointed. Does that make any sense?
Brilliant. Thank you for sharing your inspiring message.
Absolutely welcome.
Where can people reach you or learn more about you and your work?
Well, I'm the senior consultant for Grander Water Revitalisation in the UK, and I've set up a website called granderwaterforlife.co.uk. So granderwaterforlife.co.uk is a curated website that walks the prospect through the journey of everything I've talked about in this talk. So it explains to you the whole water narrative in bite-sized pieces. There are videos you can look at, there are testimonials you can look at, and then that way, if you want to, you can then click on a button and buy now, where you can buy the bottle or the filter, or you can buy or book an interview to a consultation for a whole house system, because that's more nuanced and we have to understand what space you've got and for the installation. So that's a more in-depth conversation. So that website, granderwaterforlife.co.uk, is the one I would recommend people visit, and they can reach out to me directly and drop me an email, and I can support them in their water journey.
Brilliant. Thank you for sharing your contact information, and people can find the links in the show notes as well.
Fantastic.
That brings us to the end of this episode. A big thank to you, our guest Jeremy, for sharing your expertise, and to all of you, our dedicated viewers and listeners. If you found value in today's discussion, join our thriving community and subscribe or follow us on social media for more insights and tips. Thanks again, Jeremy, and thank you everyone for being a part of this journey.
And thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate it. I look forward to meeting your community.
Brilliant. Until next time, take care of your health and keep thriving.
Absolutely. Take care.